Each face in this video is drawn from a real artifact, a painting, engraving, or sculpture preserved in museums across Europe and beyond. These portraits, created centuries ago, offer rare glimpses into minds that shaped the modern world. Using AI reconstruction, we've reimagined their presence with care and historical fidelity, breathing life into the thinkers, rulers, and artists who transformed our age. This portrait of Leonardo da Vinci was drawn around 1515 by his pupil Francesco Melzi. Preserved in the Royal Collection at Windsor, it is one of the few images believed to depict the Renaissance master from life, a man whose mind shaped art, science, and engineering for centuries to come. Painter, anatomist, inventor, Leonardo embodied the spirit of the Renaissance. His notebooks explored the mechanics of flight, the structure of the human body, and the hidden laws of nature. Yet behind the genius was a human face, captured here in quiet thought, just as he must have appeared to those who knew him. This portrait of Michelangelo was painted around 1550 by his close friend Daniele da Volterra. Preserved at Casa Buonarroti in Florence, it offers a rare, intimate glimpse of the great sculptor near the end of his life. Furrowed brow, tired eyes, and the intensity of a man shaped by marble and vision. Michelangelo sculpted the Pietà before he was 25 and painted the Sistine Chapel's ceiling by 37. He built the dome of St. Peter's by 40. Peter's Basilica, drew architectural blueprints, and left behind poems, letters, and fury. His work transcended flesh and stone, and in this portrait, we see not just the legend, but the man. This portrait of William Shakespeare, the famous Chandos portrait, was likely painted from life around 1600. Held in the National Portrait Gallery in London, it captures the quiet confidence of a man whose words reshaped language and theatre forever. Playwright, actor, and poet, Shakespeare's works spanned tragedy, comedy, and history with unmatched depth. From Hamlet to Macbeth, his characters live on in every generation. Here, we glimpse not just the voice of English literature, but the thoughtful man behind the quill. This portrait of Galileo Galilei was painted by Justus Sustermans in 1636, during the final years of Galileo's life. Preserved today at the Uffizi Gallery in Florence, the image shows the aging scientist holding a telescope, the instrument that turned the heavens into a readable book. Galileo dared to say that Earth moved, that Jupiter had moons, and that nature could be measured with mathematics. His discoveries reshaped astronomy, but also brought him before the Inquisition. In this portrait, we see a man worn by trial, but unbowed in spirit, a symbol of reason defying silence. This portrait of Martin Luther was painted in 1528 by his close ally, Lucas Cranach the Elder. Preserved at the Uffizi Gallery in Florence, it shows the reformer in his signature black coat and beret, a bold and unflinching gaze reflecting a man who challenged an empire. Luther sparked the Reformation by nailing 95 theses to a church door, defying centuries of papal authority. He translated the Bible into German, reshaped Christian thought, and stood trial at Worms with the words, "Here I stand." In this portrait, we see not just a theologian, but a revolutionary mind in quiet defiance. This Renaissance portrait of Nicolaus Copernicus presents the astronomer in stark, meticulous detail, the likely work of a contemporary artist around 1580, just decades after his death. It reflects the serious, reserved personality of the man who would reshape our understanding of the cosmos. Born in 1473, Copernicus revolutionized astronomy by proposing a heliocentric model of the universe, with the Sun, not the Earth, at the center. His masterpiece, De Revolutionibus Orbium Coelestium, challenged centuries of geocentric doctrine. Though his ideas faced resistance, they ignited the scientific revolution. Copernicus died in 1543, his legacy written in the stars. This portrait of Isaac Newton, painted in 1689 by Godfrey Kneller and housed at Trinity College, captures the intensity of a mind that reshaped science. The solemn gaze, voluminous hair, and austere clothing reflect a man absorbed in thought, just as his theories began to upend the known world. Born in 1643, Newton revolutionized physics and mathematics. He formulated the laws of motion and universal gravitation, laying the foundation for classical mechanics. His work, Philosophiae Naturalis Principia Mathematica, unified terrestrial and celestial physics, and his studies of light and optics transformed how we understand color and perception. Newton died in 1727, leaving behind a legacy that still governs the cosmos. This marble bust of Voltaire, sculpted by Jean-Antoine Houdon in 1778 and preserved at the Musée Carnavalet in Paris, captures the Enlightenment writer in his final year. The sharp eyes and subtle smile carved in stone reflect the wit, irony, and defiance that defined his life. Born in 1694, Voltaire was a tireless critic of tyranny, fanaticism, and censorship. Through plays, essays, and letters, he wielded satire like a weapon, fighting for civil liberties, reason, and religious tolerance. His Candide remains a searing critique of blind optimism and cruelty. Though exiled and censored in his lifetime, Voltaire helped ignite a revolution of thought that reshaped Europe. He died in 1778, but his voice still echoes in every defense of free speech. This portrait of John Locke, painted around 1697 by Godfrey Kneller and now held in the National Portrait Gallery in London, captures the English philosopher in his later years. His sharp gaze and deliberate posture reflect the disciplined mind behind modern liberal thought. Born in 1632, Locke laid the intellectual foundation for constitutional democracy. He argued that government must protect life, liberty, and property, ideas that would shape the American and French revolutions. In his two treatises of government, Locke rejected absolute monarchy and championed the consent of the governed. In an essay concerning human understanding, he explored how experience forms knowledge. He died in 1704, but his vision of human rights and reason endures in every democratic society. This 1753 medallion by Jacques-Antoine Dacier, held at the Bibliothèque Nationale de France, captures the calm dignity of Charles de Montesquieu near the end of his life. The sculpted profile reflects the precision and clarity that defined his thought. Born in 1689, Montesquieu was a French political philosopher whose work reshaped modern governance. In the spirit of the laws, he introduced the idea of separating powers into legislative, executive, and judicial branches, a concept that became foundational in constitutional democracies. His belief that liberty thrives when power is checked inspired the framers of the U.S. Constitution. Montesquieu died in 1755, but his vision of balanced government remains vital to this day. This posthumous portrait of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, painted in 1819 by Barbara Kraft and now displayed in Mozart House, Vienna, presents the composer in rich red attire with sharp, refined features. Though painted decades after his death, it captures the youthful brilliance that defined his life. Born in 1756, Mozart was a musical prodigy who began composing at age 5 and performing across Europe soon after. His genius spanned every genre, from symphonies and operas to chamber music and sacred works. With over 600 compositions, including the Magic Flute, Don Giovanni, and Eine kleine Nachtmusik, he redefined the possibilities of melody and structure. Mozart died young, at just 35, but his music remains one of the clearest voices of the classical era. This oil portrait of Immanuel Kant, attributed to Gottlieb Dubler and dating to around 1768, presents the philosopher in his prime, contemplative, precise, and self-contained. Though the original is lost, this reproduction preserves his calm expression and modest attire, reflecting a life governed by reason. Born in Königsberg in 1724, Kant transformed philosophy with his critique of pure reason, where he bridged the gap between rationalism and empiricism. He argued that our understanding of the world is shaped not only by experience, but also by the inherent structures of the mind. Kant's moral philosophy, centered on duty and the categorical imperative, remains a cornerstone of ethical thought. He never traveled far from his city, yet his ideas reshaped the intellectual map of Europe. Kant died in 1804, leaving behind a legacy of radical clarity and disciplined thought. This pastel portrait of Jean-Jacques Rousseau, created around 1766 by Maurice Quentin de la Tour, captures the philosopher in his mid-50s, thoughtful, poised, with a faintly melancholic gaze. It reflects the inward tension of a man who sought truth in nature and conflict in society. Born in Geneva in 1712, Rousseau became one of the most influential thinkers of the Enlightenment. He believed civilization corrupted man's innate goodness and that true freedom could only arise from the general will. His works, The Social Contract, Emile, and Confessions, challenged monarchies and inspired revolutions. Yet Rousseau lived much of his life as an outsider, often in self-imposed exile, tormented by paranoia. He died in 1778, misunderstood by many, but revered by history as a prophet of both liberty and inner struggle. This portrait by Fyodor Rokotov, painted around 1763, presents Catherine the Great as a poised and commanding figure, a sovereign shaped by Enlightenment ideals and imperial ambition. She led Russia into a golden age, expanding its borders, modernizing its institutions, and championing the arts and sciences. Fluent in French and a student of Voltaire, Catherine corresponded with Europe's leading thinkers while tightening her grip on autocratic rule. Balancing philosophy with pragmatism, she redefined what it meant to rule, as a woman, a reformer, and an empress. This 1717 portrait by Jean-Marc Nattier shows Peter the Great in regal military attire during his visit to France, a monarch both feared and admired across Europe. He modernized Russia with a relentless hand, founding St. Petersburg, reforming the army, and turning a medieval empire into a rising European power. Peter traveled incognito through Europe, learning shipbuilding and engineering, then returned to reshape Russia with the force of will and vision. Though ruthless at times, his ambition broke centuries of tradition and left a legacy that defined Russia's future as an imperial state. This 1785 portrait by Joseph Duplessis shows Benjamin Franklin in the final years of his life, calm, reflective, and still brimming with wit. One of America's founding fathers, Franklin was a printer, scientist, inventor, diplomat, and author, whose influence shaped the new republic. He experimented with electricity, invented bifocal glasses, and helped draft the Declaration of Independence and U.S. Constitution. Admired in Europe and beloved at home, Franklin bridged science and politics, lighting both with reason and revolutionary spirit. This portrait by Gilbert Stuart, painted in 1796, is one of the most iconic images of George Washington, a man who became a symbol of the American Republic. Washington led the Continental Army to victory in the Revolutionary War and became the first president of the United States, setting many of the precedents that define the office today. He declined the offer of monarchy, retired peacefully after 2 terms, and helped define a new model of leadership rooted in civic virtue. Both revered and human, Washington embodied the difficult birth of a nation, stoic, determined, and deeply aware of the weight of history. This portrait by Elias Gottlob Hausmann, painted in 1746, is the most iconic image of Johann Sebastian Bach, the master of counterpoint and Baroque expression. Bach spent most of his life in Germany, composing sacred works, cantatas, and instrumental music that would later be recognized as some of the greatest in Western history. As organist, teacher, and composer, he combined mathematical complexity with deep spiritual emotion. Though underappreciated in his lifetime, Bach's music now resonates across centuries, a bridge between heaven and reason, structure and soul. This 1769 portrait by Louis-Michel van Loo captures Denis Diderot at the height of his intellectual power, reflective, warm, and inquisitive. Diderot was a leading Enlightenment philosopher and the chief editor of the Encyclopédie, a monumental work that aimed to catalogue all human knowledge. He wrote on everything from aesthetics and science to politics and morality, challenging religious dogma and championing reason and tolerance. Through his bold ideas and restless curiosity, Diderot helped ignite the fires of revolution and reshape the modern mind. This portrait of Anders Celsius, created around 1740 and preserved at Uppsala University, shows the Swedish scientist who redefined how we measure the world. An astronomer by training, Celsius taught at Uppsala and established Sweden's first modern observatory. He conducted groundbreaking research on the shape of the Earth and geomagnetism, traveling to the Arctic to measure arc distances and prove Newton's theories. But his most enduring legacy came in 1742, when he proposed a new temperature scale, based on the freezing and boiling points of water, that would later become a global standard. Though he died young, Celsius left behind a name known on every thermometer, a symbol of scientific clarity in a world seeking precision.